Go.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Insurance WebEx program. Today, scoring the easy double. I'm Jim Ruta with the Covenant Group in Toronto. We work all across North America, Southeast Asia, and a little bit in Europe as well. And today, this idea of scoring the easy double. I welcome all of you from across the United States and Canada who are here with me today. And I look forward to giving you some, I think, wonderful ideas on how you can double your production, double your revenue in the next 12 to 18 months. It's not an impossibility. Sometimes I think we get to thinking that it's impossible, but it really isn't. Let's have a look at what we're talking about first. The Covenant Group is a company that educates and coaches entrepreneurs to achieve more success as they define it. We try to help you do what you do better. And of course, advisors are only entrepreneurs who have chosen the financial services business as their business. It's where they are entrepreneurs. I think that's an important consideration too. So today we'll talk a little bit. We'll show you some of the stuff that comes in our Coach on the Go program. It's an all-new webinar-supported online business development program that will help you with the 4 cornerstones of building your business. These are the 4 things that we will talk about in programs like that, but it's really part of this easy double. So it includes strategy, the structure you've got, the systems and processes that you use, and of course the financial management of your own organization. These 4 cornerstones are the same as my ICON protocol that if some of you were with me on one of my last webinars, you've heard me talk about that same thing. ICON protocol is that idea of the 4 key competencies, the 4 core competencies that top advisors have to be successful. These include inspiration, communication, organization, and numeration. So those 4 are the same as these 4 cornerstones. So let's get right into it. What is the easy double? And I kind of borrowed that little diagram off the registration page here that you got from Insurance WebEx. And I kind of like that. It's kind of dialing up your power in the business. Well, this is all about doubling your production and your revenue in 12 to 18 months by knowing what to do and how to do it and how to do it better. You know, I've been in and around this business for more than 40 years. And I can tell you, having worked with some of the best advisors in the world and being able to have blessed to have been coached or to have been coached by many, but in fact I've coached many as well. I think I know, and certainly in the research that we've done at the Covenant Group, we've also found ways to help you do this, to double your production. And by the way, this works not only if you are making $50,000, it will work at 100 or 250 or 500 or even $1 million. And indeed, you can find a way to make that happen. And I've seen that in all different levels, all different categories of producer. So some of the very best can still have that kind of impact on their business. Now, what we know is that there are 3 kinds of advisors. And, you know, they, depending on where you stand on this, really can tell you about how much you really can change and how much you can do with your business. The first kind are the players. These are people who have a long-term vision of their business and where they stand in it. They see the future. They see the possibilities. The second kind of advisor, well, these are the producers. These have maybe a different view of it, but they make sales and they move product. And these people, well, they're producers. They get the job done. Perhaps not looking for the longer term, but in fact, they do get some work done. And the third kind, sadly, I think these are the pretenders, or maybe the posers in the business. And this is not to be looked at too negatively neither. Look, I think a lot of us have spent a long time trying to figure out just where we stand in the business and where our future lies in it. I know I spoke the other day in Vancouver, Canada, about this exact topic. And I know the organizer was a bit worried, well, gee, you're going to call my people pretenders. But really, you know, these are people who they don't know themselves or the business or their business well enough to be able to make huge improvements or really to do as well as they want to do. So the question really is two parts at the end of this. Which one are you? But more importantly, where do you want to be? Who do you want to be? And I think we all know that we want to be a player. We want to see this as a long-term business. I think the very fact that you've signed up, registered for this program suggests that you see a longer-term business for yourself. You're looking at a longer view. And that's what we hope to do. So we want to make you a player in this business. So let's see how that happens. But we know that what holds back most advisors in a lot of ways is, well, there's a few things. The first of it is many people just work to pay their monthly bills. Yep, it's just kind of at the Covenant Group, we call that they work cash on cash. And for us, and I see this a lot, we're just making our minimums. We're just getting by. Now, it's funny how high up you can go on the ladder and still be just getting by. I spoke to a group in Las Vegas recently, and I saw someone I've known for many years. Here's someone making about $250,000 a year, not shabby income wherever you are. But he still said to me, Jim, sometimes I still worry about how I'll put groceries on the table. So there's a guy, even at $250,000 a year, who's still just working to pay his monthly bills. These people tend to have a shorter term view of things. My monthly bills, that's part of it. But we're not really going beyond that. What's the big picture? Where are we? Where will I be in 5 years? What's a 3-year plan for me? That kind of thing. And partly we talk about plans where we know that 95% of advisors don't have a business plan, nor do they have a planning process that they can depend on to move them on a month-to-month basis either. There's just nothing there to help them move forward. There's just no plan that they can work on. You need to work in your business, but you also need to work on your business. And that's something that is lacking, and it holds back most advisors. A lot of them are also sole practitioners playing what we call a finite game, And here's the deal. It may just be you and an assistant, or maybe even just you. You may be in an office. You may be in a home office. You may be in a small place or a large place. It doesn't matter, but you're a sole practitioner playing a finite game. What does that mean? What that really means is that you're somebody who all of your results are based upon solely your effort, just what you do. It's just you and your organization. And this leads us to another problem about trying to do too much. We try to handle too many things on our own, cover off too much. Partly, I think it's because we worry that if we don't do it, somebody else will. And there's been a lot of, I think, guidance, poorly directed in this respect, that over the years to say, well, you have to just keep adding more and more tools to your toolkit. In fact, the trouble with a lot of that ends up that you can scarcely carry that toolkit around to get the job done. So what happens is there's no team involved. You don't have any associates that can assist you with related areas in your business. You may not have enough staff or even any staff to assist you to get your job done better. And I love the acronym for team, and that's kind of why I put it in caps on that slide. Together, everyone achieves more. And the everyone here is not just you. Of course, you achieve more. Of course, your partners or your associates would achieve more also. But the real addition here, the real more, is for the consumer, your client, your prospect. Together, the prospect achieves more. And that, to me, is what this is all about. You see, what we know is that most advisors freely admit that they aren't working up to their full potential. And I think that's a darn shame. I've been around for a long time, and I've seen a lot of advisors doing extraordinarily well. And as you get up further and further and achieve more and more of your potential, this business becomes fun. It's exciting to do. When you start, keep this in mind. When you start playing over your head, you're just living up to your potential. When you start playing over your head, and you know how those things can happen on occasion. Sometimes you hit that big home run. You get the big case. You say, well, boy, that's not me. No, you get a glimpse of your potential. You get a glimpse of what it is that you could actually do. Think about that. In many ways, you look at your own business. You say, I've got, you look at your best week. You multiply that by 40. That's really your current potential. That's what it is if you would let it go. And that's what we want to do, is sort of let you go so that you don't get held back. So the prerequisites for the Easy Double, well, see, the first thing I got to tell you is that not every advisor will qualify for the Easy Double. Doesn't always, God, some people just won't do it. And I know that there are people out there who say, well, I'll see what happens. A lot of people said to me, Jim, I want to double my business, but I don't want to do anything different. I want to just keep on what I'm doing, but I want to get better results. That's what I want to do. Well, as I say in Alabama, that dog don't hunt. I don't think it does. It can't be that way. You see, to be a success, to double your revenue, to go from 500 to 1 million, from 100 to 200, from 50 to 100, you must be prepared to do what high-performing advisors do. And like I say, you must be prepared to act like an icon. An icon, by the way, remember I said, of course, that's an acronym for what it takes to those competencies. But on top of that, an icon is someone recognized as a representative symbol of what it means to be in this business. An icon, the Ben Feldmans of the world, the Van Millers, the Jim Silbernagels, the Marv Feldmans, the Mark Silvermans. These are icons in the industry. You have your own. And I think the one thing that's so great about this business is that if you can aspire to icon, and even if you come short, you will still be the very best you can be. And that's why we're here. So what are the 3 C's of high performance advisor success? I think there are these 3 requirements that you have to have if you want to, well, get into that Easy Double. And it starts off with the first one, which is the C is confidence. You have to believe, absolutely believe, in the value you provide by your work, by your system, by your product to everyone that you know that would be in your natural market, that would be in your ideal marketplace. You have to be able to approach those people shamelessly about how you help them. Now, what that would mean is you have to be prepared to talk to your friends and family first. And I know some of you are just cringing at the very thought. And I think about the number of people. I spent a lot of years, as a quarter of a century really, recruiting new advisors. And if I had $10 for every advisor who told me, man, if I have to depend on my friends and family to do this, I won't do it. I think, we babied those people over the years, and that was to my discredit. Because the fact of it is that it's not that you need to depend on them to do work for you, or rather for business. First of all, they're depending on you to call on them, and I think that's true, number one. But 2, here's the deal. You have to feel so strongly about the work you do that you would want to call them, that they're the first people you would talk to. Now, let me give you a quick example of this. I think it's a very interesting story. Let's just suppose you could sell a high-quality prestige automobile. You choose which one you would like it to be. I had someone the other day tell me that Bentley was his deal, but it might be a top-of-the-line, anything you like. Let's say it's worth $100,000, and you could legitimately sell that $100,000 vehicle for just $20,000. Just $20,000. And you had all the resources, or rather unlimited supply of those vehicles. What would be the first thing you would do? Well, as someone told me the other day, I would buy one for me. I'd buy one for my spouse. That's the first thing. Then what else would you do? Well, then I'd be calling everybody I knew that I liked. I'd call my closest friends, my closest family first. I want as many people as possible to get in on this extraordinary deal. And if someone said, well, gee, Jim, I'm not really interested in a Bentley or a Mercedes or a BMW or whatever it is, a Ferrari, it wouldn't even bother me. I say, well, that's okay. You don't have to do that. You just go to next. You hear a no, it means next. You just keep on going. You wouldn't even think about it. It's that sort of confidence in your ability, in what you provide, in the work that you do, that you have to have. I was blessed recently to be in San Antonio at the NAFA P+P conference. recently, a couple weeks ago, and it was extraordinary to see on that main platform, rather on a side platform somewhere. Hard to imagine this was a side platform deal there. But we had Van Miller, Marv Feldman, Jim Silbernagel, and John Wheeler talking about what it was that made them successful, giving their scripts. And you could tell, and I think Van Miller is a perfect example of this. He will talk to anybody about what he does. And he believes that everybody has to hear what he says. And he has a very, middle-income American taxpayer kind of marketplace. He's not the top of the market. He's not at the bottom of the market. He's somebody who talks to people of all descriptions. That's what he does. But you can listen to him talk, and he has extraordinary confidence and value, and values his value in the market. He does an outstanding job. You have to have that so that you want to talk to your friends and family first, because you believe everybody should have the opportunity to say at least no to you once. Secondly, you have to have courage, the courage to start conversations with prospects. I mentioned Van just a minute ago, and Van's a guy who will stop people in shopping malls. Moms and dads pushing strollers with little kids in it. It's extraordinary to have that courage to do that. But, you don't have to have the courage on its own. It comes because of the confidence. And that's why I often suggest to advisors, find that area of the business in which you have extraordinary confidence and make that the business that you promote. That's your lead story all the time. And then the third thing, which doesn't sound quite as maybe glamorous as the first two, or maybe as difficult, is this idea of community. This is a real important consideration as you do this. And number one, community is this. Through your prospecting and through the development of your business, what you do is you create a community of clients and prospects. You work with them. You build a community. Because, for example, just because someone says no today doesn't mean that's no forever. Even in our friend Al Granham's, and God rest him, the 10-3-1 story, in the 7 of the 10 who are not prospects, those people might still be prospects someday. Jim, would you mind, people change, times change, and things change. Would you mind if I kept you on my list and kept in contact with you, over the next year? Most people will agree to that. And that means that you are building a community. And these are people you work with. And today, with social media, with the things you can do, and I recognize there are FINRA restrictions and compliance restrictions, and depending on where you are and what you're doing, all of those things can impact that. But to the degree you can, you want to make sure that community knows who you are and what you do. Whether in the old days, of course, that would have been an analog, a paper newsletter. Today, it might be a newsletter on your website. It might be a podcast. It might be a newsletter that you email to your clients or to your prospects with the appropriate permissions. But you build a community, so that confidence in what you do, you value your value, the courage to start the conversation, and of course the community that you build with your prospects and your clients over time. So it really requires, I think, you to rethink prospecting in so many ways. And really, let me ask you 2 questions now, and just maybe write down your answers, just so you have them in front of you and you can think about it. This is a very short answer test here, but just for you to think about. Number 1, think about it this way. How many prospects do you have in your prospecting pipeline today? How many prospects do you have in that pipeline? What will that be today? Can you write that number down? Number 1. Number 2, when do you expect to close these prospects? What time period in the next little while do you expect to close these prospects? So let's see what happens. Well, look, the average advisor, the average prospector, says that they have between 5 and 40 prospects. Generally speaking, that's what we hear. I have between 5 and 40 prospects. You may have a little less or maybe even a little more, but something like that. And then they also say this, that they will expect to close these people either in the next week, the next month, the next quarter, and maybe as far in the future as maybe even a year. So that's what they've got, 5 to 40 prospects. and then they'll close within the next 1 week, 1 month, 1 quarter, probably half a year, probably is where that goes. Now, is that what you're thinking? Because this is really short-term thinking as we're measuring it here. So maybe a little bit of news to you, but it's a little different thing. If you want to easy double, you have to think a little differently. You need to think a little bit more like the top advisors, the high-performing advisors, what they say they do. And here's a difference. On average, those people say they have between 100 and 300 prospects available, and that's what they're thinking. Does that community sound like something now? That community that they've built up prospects, and they know they're in the system somewhere. I'm reminded years ago, I used to work with a former NHL hockey player, Gary Dornhofer. Dorney played for the Philadelphia Flyers, one of the old Broad Street bullies. And I always got a kick out of him because he always had a longer term view of prospecting than even I had, honestly. He's a guy who came June, he'd be playing golf. Man, June, July, August, I couldn't get him back. I couldn't get him in the office. And I asked him one day, I said, Gary, what are you doing? He says, I'm making a list. And he was playing with prospects, and he wouldn't pitch them during the summer because he said that wasn't appropriate. But came the fall, that's when he would do it. And believe me, that's when he did. So he had 3, 4, 5 months, but some of those people he would golf with for 2 or 3 years. And then one day it would just work. And here's the deal. And that's what we know. We know that the top advisors will close those prospects in 1 to 3 years. Sure, some things close early, but they have a longer term view. They have longer term thinking about their prospecting. And for that easy double, you have to think longer term too. And that sounds counterintuitive perhaps, because I'm thinking longer term, you don't want to double it in the next 12 to 18 months. And here's why. Because you're thinking longer term, but you're building up a bigger community, a bigger prospect pipeline, a bigger reservoir of prospects that you can work from in the future. And when you think about prospecting, to rethink it, you realize that there are 3 R's of high performance prospecting. First of all, you have to have the right client. And I'll talk about this in a second, about the demographics and maybe more importantly, the psychographics of that right client. Secondly, it's the right value proposition. What they need that you can provide. That's the second R in the 3 R's. And then finally, the right exchange of value. You need to account for the real value of what you do and how it impacts your clients and that exchange of value. And I find this a little odd, and I can tell you, I would have thought this maybe even just wrong for the longest time. But I think you'll find it interesting. But let's start then. Let's start with the right client. Now, here's something we know. And if you want to get it, you want to start that easy double in your business, the narrower your focus, the broader your performance, the broader your production, the broader your potential. The narrower your focus. That means you start saying, well, we don't talk to anybody with a heartbeat. We start segmenting our prospecting. So we're looking for a certain kind of person. And we'll talk about that person. But remember this, when you know who you're going to sell and who your prospect is, you know what, where, when, why, and how also. You know who, you know what to sell them, where they are, when you can find them, how to get to them, and why they should buy. You'll know all those things. I think, frankly, this right client is the #1 decision you ever have to make in business. I found that if advisors can focus that in fact, eliminate parts of the market they don't want to talk to, then you know what? They actually become more successful. It seems counterintuitive, but it works. Now, we talked before about the demographics, and I think you want to have that in your business. You say, well, what is the age, the income, the employment status, the marital status, all those things you'll see on a census form. So you pick those. I think the old story is still true. Within 10 years of your age works very nicely. Now, it doesn't always work that way. I have a friend, top of the table producer in Western Canada, who, he's in his late 60s, but he sells a lot of business to people in their 30s and 20s even. And he's a guy who writes 400 or 500 cases a year, and he loves talking to young people. He just loves doing that. And he says, no, you don't have to listen to a word I say, but let me tell you, here's some things I can tell you that absolutely work. And I'm going to give them to you. And by the way, if you do it or don't do it, won't matter to me. But I know after 7 years in the business, 48 years, says George, I know they make a difference. Let me show you what to do. So the demographics are important. But more important than demographics, I think, are psychographics. Now, the psychographics relate to your values and the characteristics, the personal characteristics of the people you work with, those people in your demographic. The psychographics, are they open-minded? Do they have strong family values? Are they generous of spirit? Do they care about their employees and their business? Do they see themselves in that longer-term picture? Do those things matter? And I think this is probably the most important consideration as you start to prospect and you rethink prospecting, looking for that right client. This is really why also introductions from top clients can be so valuable to you. If you get along with a client, now think about this, then they are likely going to refer you to people like them too. We tend to hang around with people who are very similar to us. And that really is on the basis of psychographics. Certainly in the United States and Canada, we've got our share of political issues. Maybe politics plays a role in that too. Maybe it's hard for a hard left-wing Democrat to work with a hard right-wing Republican. Maybe it's certainly a liberal conservative here we have in Canada. Might be maybe it's difficult today. I'm just saying psychographics are an important consideration. You really want to be very specific to be very terrific in this business, both and especially here about your client. And you will, of course, generate 3 different kinds. There'll be the primary clientele, the secondary clientele, and the tertiary clientele. It might be you're looking for a certain person in this business, but you might also work with their family, which would not be in that same category. And you might also work across with their tertiary. With the tertiary market would be their employees. For example, not your first market necessarily, the employees. If you're in the business market, business owners are what I'm after. Their family would be secondary, tertiary would be their employees in that sort of basis. The right value proposition is also important. And what that is, of course, is a short, compelling statement of your client benefit deliverable. I used to call this an expert identity. What you do specifically and for whom specifically. And, I remember someone saying to me years ago, something like, we preserve legacies for people who care. For Canadian families, for American families, preserving legacies for American families. That sort of idea, the kind of thing you have to have, and you have to think about as you do this. And the top advisors are people who will prepare, practice, and perfect their value proposition. And it'll be something that they believe in deeply. Deeply. It cannot simply be something, you sort of get. I go back to, remember I talked before about confidence, that whole idea of inspiration from Icon Protocol. You've got to be inspired in this business if you expect to persist. And that value proposition has to represent that. It has to demonstrate that to your prospect and to your client, and that you believe in it deeply. If you don't believe in it deeply, believe me, you will never be successful in this business, I don't think. I've never seen anyone be successful on the long term if they didn't believe in their product. And life insurance is probably the best example of that. Life insurance people who believe and demonstrate that by significant ownership, these people, there's just no end to what they can accomplish. Think about advisors who have $3, $4, $5 million worth of cash value in their permanent cash value life insurance policies. I'm hearing and I'm seeing comparisons today with advisors talking about how much cash value do you have in your contracts. It's an amazing thing. That definitely shows value proposition that they believe in. And then finally here in the 3 R's, we have this idea of the right exchange of value. And I said before, this is kind of what bothers me, what used to bother me before. How big a check does a prospect have to write for it to make it worthwhile for you? Well, I used to think, gee, that's not really fair, is it? People they're only valuable to the extent they can write a check. Well, this is a business, and I'm thinking about my friend Bhupinder Anand in England, in London, who says, advisors who treat their businesses like a charity will soon have to make use of one. It may not be exactly true, but you get the point. At some point, you have to decide how much value you provide and what it needs to be worth to you to do that work. I can tell you, I can remember speaking years ago, as you know, I coach advisors, but I also speak around the world. I can remember early on in my career offering to speak for $500. And all the preparation that went into that presentation, the hours and hours went in before. And then the hour I was there, and in fact, it was a sort of a strange audience, and they didn't really react terribly well. And it just wasn't that much fun. And I remember driving home for an hour from this event, thinking, man, this is not worth it. It's just not worth it. I have a client who tells me that he won't cross the street. Now, he's a very high-end advisor, owns his own 4-story glass curtain wall building, so he's doing okay, but he says to me, I won't cross the street for a $20,000 annual life insurance premium. $20,000. Made me think there for a minute that, sorry I gave up my license a few years back, because I surely would have crossed the city for that, much less crossed the street. But for him, his exchange of value was such that it wasn't worth his time, because he'd have to be giving up something where he was doing a $200,000 premium for a $20,000 premium. And in fact, in his organization, there are people that can handle the smaller cases, as much as that is with him, a smaller case like that. So you need to think about how big a check they need to write to make it worthwhile to you. I don't think we often do this, but in terms of that easy double, if you can start to say, I can't do this. If, by the way, think about it. If you're doing $100 premiums per month, and you say, well, no, it's really worth $250 or $300 is the minimum that I should be getting paid for my time for this because of the benefit I'm giving them, then all of a sudden you might double or triple your income just from that one idea. Just one idea. By having that right exchange of value with the right client, you might even adjust your value proposition. So that's amazing stuff. And the reason this works really is that benefits in a business relationship need to be reciprocal, and that makes them healthy and fosters growth all along. Now, average advisors will be measuring transaction value and the compensation they make on a case, so that's part of it. But the top advisors have a different look at it anyway. They're measuring something called client capital. And that could be a reason why you might even violate your own rule about $20,000 annual premium, for example. You might change that a little bit because of the client capital involved, or the client capital growth potential with that particular client that goes on. So what is client capital? Well, client capital talks about three things. First of all, it talks about the depth of relationship that you have. So if you're doing something to deepen the relationship, for example, increase the number of times they buy, or increase your influence with them, or increase your trusted advisor status. If you're doing things that build the depth of relationship, that people see that they want to buy more from you, and that you're helping them with more influence and becoming more trusted. Well, that's an important consideration. The second one is the breadth of the relationship. Now, that's the extent to which they are willing to introduce you to their social circle. So it's not just what they're doing, that's the depth, but it's the breadth. How might I help you expand through the people that I know? You could see this. I might be prepared to take on a smaller case because it expands the breadth of the relationship that I have with a particular client. Maybe I've got $20,000 minimum, let's just say even a $5,000 minimum, but I might be inclined to go for a $2,000 case just because it expands the breadth of the relationship I have with the person that introduced me. And then thirdly, has to do with engagement. How deeply engaged your client is in you, and how much they believe that you help, and how much they are willing to help you in return. That's a huge piece. So these three pieces have to do with client capital: depth of relationship, breadth of relationship, and the engagement that you've got with that client. That's client capital. Now, what is then the easy double protocol? Well, there are 3 steps, we think. And first of all, it starts off with what I call thinking longer about your business and about prospecting. Just think longer term about this. Remember that you're not just, we used to do this, I remember years ago, I think this was a thing everywhere, pretty much, where we would make phone calls Monday night for appointments that week. That's a real short-term thing. I can even remember once or twice, someone said, we'd have 5 guys in the office making phone calls, and hey, what happened to Bob? Well, Bob disappeared because Bob got an appointment that night, and off he went. That's real short-term thinking. I think you want to stretch it out a little bit longer. That makes prospecting easier. It means asking for introductions easier, because everything doesn't have to be right now. It could be a longer-term thing. I don't know whether you can recall, but maybe some people still use these, the Project 100 from Limerick. And Project 100 was a place where, as a brand new prospect, a recruit, a candidate for the industry, you have to write down, a recruiting manager would ask you to write down the names of the people, and including some information about them, phone numbers, that kind of thing, on this list, that would talk about the people you know from your previous job, that your wife knows, that you know from your wife's occupation, that your kids that your kids know, or that you know through your children, that you know from your religious activities, that you know from your service clubs, that sort of thing. There was about 10 categories, I think, and about 10 names per each of them. The idea was to build up 10 names in each, 100 names, and this would give you a base upon which to start your business. But here's the thing. I think a lot of times we kind of gave that up and just left it. And maybe some people say, well, I can't talk to my friends and family, so I'm not going to go there either. Well, that's a real mistake. Because I think today you need like a project forever, in the sense that you're always looking to add names to that list. You're always looking for people to talk to. And you know what? You don't know when or how you could come across them. One of the top advisors I know in Toronto, David Hull, has a really interesting thing. And he says, you know what? He says, he's the guy doing almost 100 cases a year at top of the table. So that makes him a little different than a lot of people, a lot of big cases, but still a lot of cases, because he's not working really 12 months a year neither. But here's a guy who might meet somebody at a party. He might meet somebody at the golf club, maybe at the cottage. He would meet somebody, and he would simply write that name down, put in his book. And when he gets back to the office, staff can really dig up all kinds of information about that person on the web today. It's amazing, really, with all the do not call, do not email, do not anything lists we have. It's amazing how much information you can find on the internet about people. And then he can simply make the call. And here's a guy who, by the way, his call is so simple. It's kind of crazy. We met at a party. Has anyone reviewed your life insurance portfolio lately? And the answer is almost always no. And his big question is this: would you have any objection to reviewing your life insurance policies with me? Because that's what I do. I know I can make a difference. It's as simple as that. There's a guy making a significant 7-figure income with lines as easy as that. So think longer term, a project forever. And also in your business, decide on the role you want to play. How big do you want to get? Let's do a little bit of dreaming. What organization do you have to have? If you can visualize it, you can create it in this business. But you do have to see the dream. You do have to. What did I think it was Jack Kinder? You have to see. You have to dream it big. I'm going to screw that up. My apologies to the late Jack Kinder. But I think you have to see it big and dream the big dream. And that makes the difference. So, for example, part of the easy double is to actually say, I want to double my production in the next 12 months, the next 18 months, the next 2 years. By the way, if you only came up halfway on that in 12 months. So only took it by 50%. What a difference that would make on its own. And then finally, the Easy Double protocol requires you to mine your social circle. Here's what we know. Everybody's looking for prospects in this business. Everybody, they've always have been. It's been the biggest thing of all. Interestingly enough, today there are something short of 7.6 billion people on the planet. 7.6 billion. So it's not that there's not enough people. There's just not enough people to ask, or we haven't asked enough people to talk to give them the opportunity to speak to us. But here's the deal. That there is, within 2 degrees of separation, enough prospects for you right now. If you have that confidence in what you do, there's enough people to talk to, quality people to talk to, within 2 degrees of separation from where you are. These are the people you know, your clients, your friends, your associates, and then the people that they know. 2 degrees of separation. You need to be prepared to mine your social circle. All right, so what do you do with social circles? Well, I think you mine them with the power of social inclusion. Surely at the high end, it's a big part of that, but anywhere, everybody likes to be part of something. So you want to be able to approach the people you know like high performance advisors do. Now, this is what we call social mobility prospecting. You need to have these scripts in place that you can ask questions and you can do the things you need to do. You need to be able to do that, and it has to come naturally from you. Now, I mentioned before the NAFA conference in San Antonio, and that panel that included Van and Mark Feldman and Jim and John. That group, I was amazed then, because about 3/4 of the way through, Van Miller stopped the process and said, guess what? He says, before I go on, remember something. We are not all here natural sales conversationalists. This is not something that just came to us. In fact, we had to do something that you can do too, and that is practice. And we had to be good at this. We had to do some research, find out what we do, and then we actually practice, kind of like you would do even this on a video. See how it sounds, do it enough times so that you're confident and you know you can lay it down flat, you can do it right. But social mobility prospecting is being able to talk to anybody you meet that's in the category that you're after. That, you can go up market too, get to the golf club and talk to the senior people, not just the junior people. You can do the people that you can talk wherever you need to be. In your neighborhood, in your community, in your church, in your synagogue, in your temple, wherever you might be. Now, high performers master the sales process language and the conversational environment. That is such a truism, it's ridiculous. But you want to score the easy double. You have to be prepared to know your stuff that well. You've got to be able to lay this out so that you know it's right and you know it's good. And it comes from your heart, not from your head. It's not something I memorized. I'm trying to read my way through that. No, that can't be it. It has to be something that really comes from you. And that's what Van said. You have to practice. This is a learned skill. And I'm going to talk about some skills here in the next few minutes so that you can pick that up too. By the way, I say here, it's especially important when you deal with your natural market, the people you naturally know, that where you have natural influence, where you have natural authority, where people listen to you. You need to be especially good there, because you won't feel good otherwise, and they might wonder what you're talking about if you don't. So what do? Well, approaching people you know, there's several ways of doing this. But this might be as simple as this: to have a discussion with somebody one day and say, recently we were doing some work and we found out that the McKinsey and Company did a study recently. It said that they found that 51% of Americans have no financial advisor. And 68% reported they had no trusted advisor. 68%. And even 45% of Tiger 21 members, that business organization, they reported no financial advisor. Jack, does that surprise you? And it doesn't really matter what they say. And that's why I love this particular, these talking points, this talking point script. Because if they say, well, it doesn't surprise them because they don't have an advisor, or it doesn't surprise, or it surprises them because they do have an advisor, it doesn't matter. Because if they have one, well, do you have enough confidence to get a second opinion on that person's work? And if they say, well, I don't have an advisor, say, well, I'd like to earn the right to qualify for that job with you. So it's a way to get in the door. Now, you could do it another way too. You might say this, if you're like most successful business people or most successful professionals or just most successful people, you already have an existing financial advisor. Is that a fair statement? And, you can say, and they can say yes or no, doesn't matter. Well, do you have enough confidence in that person's advice to get a second opinion? Or, hey, I'd like to earn the right to qualify for that job with you. Do you think you could find 20 or 30 minutes in the next couple of weeks when I could sit down over a cup of coffee with you to have that discussion and talk to you? Now, listen, these are all the people you know. You know all kinds of them. They're using you as an excuse. Gee, I can't buy any insurance from you, Bob, because Jim's my agent. Not that Jim ever talks to me, but they're using you as an excuse. You could help them with this. But there's a simple way. Now, you might be saying to yourself, gee, Jim, this is really so simple. I can't believe this is it. Yeah, I know. Except it is. Except it is. It really boils down to simple language, simple words, simple questions. It's just simple. That's the whole idea behind this. It's simple stuff. So you might want to request introductions from your clients, from your existing clients, or maybe centers of influence in that marketplace. So you could say something like this, most successful people choose a financial advisor, an insurance advisor, an investment advisor, as you would, based upon a concept we call social inclusion. And that's kind of through people they know. They kind of get, well, it's a word of mouth advertising. It's the best kind of advertising there is. So I'll tell you what, for example, if someone you knew and respected, Bob, walked into the room that we're in right now, would you hesitate to introduce us? And what are they going to say? Of course, they're not going to say anything different. Say, of course I would. Happy. Well, thank you. I would like to ask your help in introducing me to successful people that you know. That's exactly what I'm after. Now, I'm not talking about people who need a financial advisor, because you know what? That's strictly up to them. And I assure you, I won't compromise your relationship with them. That's just too important to me. I just want successful people that I can talk to. Does that sound reasonable enough? Now, what we know is that on average, people know about 20 people like themselves. And I would love to meet those people over the next 1 to 2 years. But right now, perhaps you could help me, you could introduce me to a couple of those people that you'd have in your 20. So I'll tell you what would be the best way for us to meet? Maybe I could buy us lunch or dinner, maybe a cup of coffee, a breakfast, could visit by your office. What would be the best way for me to be introduced to those people? And you know what? Here's the point. They don't have to say yes. It doesn't matter because we're thinking longer term now. And you know what? You say, well, someday that might be a good idea. Maybe this guy says, well, I'm not really comfortable right now for whatever reason. It doesn't even matter. The idea is you're looking longer term, and now you're building up client capital. You're working on a longer term list, your project forever. Now, you might ask this question too. You might guess, well, how to create interest when you're asked what to do. Now, I don't know about you, but a lot of people that I work with, man, they don't know what to say. They kind of panic when someone says, what do you do? Because more questions than answers come to mind. Like, do you want to just tell it straight? I'm a life insurance agent. I'm a financial advisor. Do you want to say something? Do you want to be clever or cute? Well, I'm a financial engineer building bridges from today to tomorrow in your financial future. Is that it? I don't know. But I tell you what does work. And we've picked this up from some great advisors in the US that I think could be worthwhile anywhere. And I've adapted it a little bit, as you can imagine. That's kind of what I do. But here's a great line. What do you do, Jim? Well, I love helping people. I love helping people in their 20s and 30s move from the majority to the minority. From the majority who really aren't taking advantage of their age to build a long-term asset, a nest egg for themselves, who are not taking advantage of all the products and services that are available to them that they can buy easily because of their age and their health, to the minority of young people in the 20s and 30s who have found a way to have a plan and who are building financial security for themselves in the long term. I just love helping people. Or maybe I just love helping people in 10 to 15 years from retirement move from the majority to the minority. From the majority who don't have a business plan and don't know where they're going to get their guaranteed income at retirement, who really don't have everything worked out and really don't sleep well at night because of it, to the minority who have a plan, who know that their finances will be okay when they go to retire, whenever that is for them, and they have that peace of mind that equals quality of life. I just love helping people. Or maybe I love helping people in business move from the common to the uncommon. A little twist here, from the common to the uncommon. From the common, who they don't have a shareholders agreement, they don't have a business, they don't have a succession plan, and you know what? They have no idea what will happen to their business if they were sick or disabled, they couldn't open the doors. They have no idea. To the uncommon business owner who in fact has a plan that covers off their major problems, and you know what? These people can focus on building their business and not being worried about it falling apart. I just love helping people move from the common to the uncommon. I think one of the best ways of doing this, answering that question, is something like that. And you can see it's adjustable to suit pretty much any purpose. So here's an example of somebody that we had at the Covenant Group that took advantage of this process with us. And Jay, you can see before it wasn't doing badly. $170,000 a year of revenue. With 18 prospects on his list. Remember, 5 to 40, he had 18, and one assistant, and he was taking 2 weeks vacation. After this process, here's a guy making $1.8 million with 166 prospects on his. By the way, you can see how now these people are really paying attention to the numbers. 2 assistants, 1 associate. He's got a team going there. 12 weeks vacation. By the way, I've had a system like this for many years. That's what I call a 340 strategy. 3 days a week is when you concentrate on driving revenue, and you have 40 weeks a year that you plan on to make that money. 40 weeks and of course 3 days a week. That's 120 days. That really gives you, I think it adds a level of urgency to what you're doing. In fact, this is one way of working less in the next 12 to 18 months, but actually achieving more. And that's really what this Easy Double is about. And you can see here for Jay, he went from 2 weeks to 12 weeks. And the business is running because he's now got associates and assistants that keep the thing going. And he's not worried about the future because his prospects are there. He now has a longer term view of his prospecting and how he operates, that whole thing. So let me give you a quick thing in the next couple of minutes, just to finish on. I'll be able to get some questions if you want them. But here's the deal. The monthly webinar program from the Covenant Group is a webinar-supported online program, Coach on the Go, that gives you all the information you need, all the help you need in the course of 12 months to build a successful business, to help you do that Easy Double. And frankly, even if you didn't even do all of these things with us, but these are things you need to do. And if you can do these, this is the kind of thing that'll get you to that Easy Double. Remember, mostly there within that 2 degrees of separation, if you have the confidence to make those calls, you can use some of those scripts that we had. And you look at that list, these are things you need to do. Improve your sales process, to create client capital, to define your business, to enhance your client experience. We go through all of those things. And of course, interestingly as well, is an online program that takes you through a sort of a metered system and a professionally created program that you can then build yourself up to be that much more successful. And in fact, double or maybe even do better than that in the next 18 months. And that's what we're after. Now, Coach on the Go is not an expense, really. You have to think of it, as all of these things are, as an investment in the growth of your business. It's $100 a month, $1,100 a year. It's not a big expense, but it could make a massive difference to your life and to your business. And really, that's what coaching does anyway. That's a big part of how you can become more successful, is by getting the help you need and by moving yourself forward. So frankly, there we go. That's the Easy Double program. And I believe that it's there for anyone to do if you can set it up the way I've talked about it today. And I think this has a lot to do with those few areas we brought in. The idea of confidence, of course. I think, the 3 R's, a big part of this, especially the idea of finding the right client and the right exchange of value. So that's for me today. I hope this gave you some information that you can use. And by the way, if you have questions about this, I can take some now if there are. If not, you can email me, JR at, sorry, let's go this way. You can go jim@covenantgroup.com, jim@covenantgroup.com, or you can text me at 416-689-7882. Tell me you were on the WebEx, the Insurance WebEx, and I'd be happy to talk to you. Are there any questions, Andre? Can we ask? Is there anyone out there?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So far, no. Let's wait maybe a minute, couple of seconds, if somebody has the courage to write something.
Well, never know. But happy to do it. And like I say, if you want to do it now, you want to talk to me offline, we can do that as well. Like I said, jim@covenantgroup.com, or text me at 416-689-7882. No? Well, listen, if not, then I thank you for this time. I hope this has been of some value to you, and that you can have, look, this is the best time of the year too. We've just started this October 1st. Man, October and November can be outstanding months. It doesn't matter how far behind you might think you are. Now is the time that you can really catch up. Think about some of those things we just gave you here in the Easy Double, and I believe you can make this an outstanding year, and then get ready to make 2019 your best ever year. I appreciate this opportunity to speak with you. I wish you all the very best. God bless you, and see you again next time.